What if there was a way for your thoughts, your words, to be sent into the future and to be understood and appreciated by someone anywhere on the planet? Would that not make us, in a way, immortal and give us the power to communicate across time and space? When we were inquisitive children curled up under the blankets, flashlight in hand, reading our favorite story, were we not actually inviting the author of that story into our innermost space to share their thoughts, their stories with us in their words? I'm Bella St. John. Join us as we venture together to explore the history of those words in A Novel Idea.
Well, my wonderful guest today, I came across this man several years ago, and I must say his book, the first fictional book that he published, is one of my all-time favorite books. Mr. Cam Clark, welcome.
Welcome. Glad to be here.
So good to talk to you. So the guests that I have on this program, they've written all different sorts, but you're one of the few who's really dived into historical fiction in the way that you have, and really recrafted it, almost like the way that Sir Walter Scott did. But we'll get onto that in a moment. Let's dive back to the very, very beginning. So you are a Canada boy, born and raised.
That's right. Yeah. I haven't moved very far from my hometown, or enjoy it here most of the time. And yeah, it's a wonderful place to live.
So for people who've not, so you're in Calgary, for people who've not been to Calgary, and maybe the only thing they know about Calgary is that it was the venue for the Winter Olympics. What is the place like? Is it big? Is it small? What is Calgary like?
It's big, getting bigger. It's about 1.5 million people. It's right on the eastern edge of the Rocky Mountains. So if I look to the east from my home where I live, I see prairies. Wow. If I look to the west, I see hills, and climb to the top of those hills, and I can see the Rocky Mountains.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So that's where you grew up, that's where you still live. And growing up, you were the youngest of 3. Now,
that's
how
right.
did that impact you? Your other siblings close in age? Are they a lot older? Or what was that like growing up as the youngest of 3?
The 3 of us are about 4 years apart, so we're pretty close in age. And it was good. We got along well. We still do. But all 3 of us had very diverse interests. Both of my older brothers were much more into music and sports. I tried music, was never really into it. Sports was even worse. So I very much found my own interests and hobbies.
Which were?
A lot of model building, photography, getting interested in history. Did a lot of reading of fiction, and was a very diverse level of interests.
Do you think the reading of fiction that you did when you were growing up had an influence on the books that you came to write later?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
How so?
Part of it was the love of the story and learning how stories flow, and reading a lot about different characters and how an author would create and develop a character. That was critical in my being able to write Robin Hood Chronicles.
which is, as we mentioned before, one of my all-time favorite books. So we'll get to Robin in a second. We'll get to Robin in a second. So still growing up, your first job was working in your parents' store. Is that something that was a rite of passage for all three boys?
My oldest brother also worked there for quite a while. My next brother did not. And I chose to work there probably the most. They sold art and drafting supplies, a small line of photo equipment. So I was right into that. And because I was building models, there was a lot of stuff that we sold that was used in model building. So it really was parallel to my interests. It also was helped me to develop my interest in my later career, my later non-writing career, which has really been leaning more towards finance and accounting and business development rather than the writing or some of my other things.
Interesting. So, but growing up, when we were chatting earlier, you said you had no idea what you wanted to do when you grew up.
That is right. Now, there's a lot of different passing things that I thought I might like to try, but
such as
I thought of going, kind of things that most kids do: police officer, firefighter, doctor, lawyer was kind of there for a little bit, but none of those things were serious enough that I felt that I wanted to pursue them. I just simply did not know where I wanted to go.
Did you have any idea of your path when you left school and went to university?
I had about a 5-year gap between high school and university, and that was the period that I was least certain of what I wanted to do. Right at the end of that, I went on fairly extensive travels for a couple of months in South America and got to see that part of the world for the first time. And that's where it kind of settled on my direction, and I decided to go into finance and business in university. That's the direction I took.
And so, in your travels, how have they impacted the writing that you have done throughout your life, if they have?
Absolutely.
How so?
My first really big trip was to the UK, and certainly fell in love with that part of the world, with the history that's there, and influenced the decision to set the majority of Robin Hood Chronicles in that part of the world.
Yes.
And then to see other parts of the world and to experience other cultures, it expands your mind. It lets you see things far more clearly than you do sitting at home or experiencing a very narrow geographic and cultural range.
Yes.
So, yeah, absolutely. The writing has made a major impact.
Yeah.
Or the traveling. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, as most people know, I travel 24/7 now, and the impact that has, just even on how I view things, and the fact that I tend to look up more than I used to, and pay attention to the little details and things. I think they're some of the things that travel brings out in you, and it's that attention to detail which was one of the key things that I loved about Robin. So can you please set the scene for us? We're talking about Robin Hood Chronicles. What is the book about?
The book is about the connection between two very diverse cultures that could not possibly meet in history because it involves 2,000 years of time travel. And this is, you know, modern or postmodern contemporary culture, which is technically driven and has the complexities of today's world, along with the UK and specifically the Celtic or native peoples of the UK as they were interacting with the Romans that had just invaded, conquered the land. So there's really three cultures that are clashing: modern, the Celtic peoples, and the Roman culture, and all coming together at one time, and how the people learn to interact and relate.
And I think the learn to interact and relate and also honor and respect one another as well, and to have that level of understanding is a really big thing that came through in the book. And we might say as well, for the people on the podcast who don't have the benefit of having seen the visuals, this is Robin with a Y, Robyn, Hood, who happens to be a girl.
Yes, she does. And that was, you know, I thought it might be a bit of a challenge because I wanted to honor her and to be a genuine, real person and realistic person. And so, yeah, it was definitely a challenge to create this character that's completely unlike me.
Mm. So take us to the point where you first had the idea for Robin. Where were you? What were the steps leading up to this little germ of an idea in your brain going, aha?
I'd known for a long time that I wanted to try my hand at a book, but I didn't really know where I wanted to start. And then I got the idea of, well, what would happen if these two people, someone from the first century AD UK and someone from the modern world, met? How would they interact?
Mm-hmm.
And it was that initial contact was really the germ of the idea. And then it expanded from there to both, well, what would be the circumstances which would allow them to meet? And what would happen afterwards? How would that play out in the real world?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the germ of it.
Mm-hmm.
In 2013, when I don't think I'd actually put pen to paper yet, or fingers to keyboard more accurately, but I made a trip to the UK and figuring out some of the places that I wanted them to go, and did physically travel to those locations.
Mm-hmm.
Did, quite by accident, get to Sherwood Forest and see the area that Robin Hood was historically supposed to be, and visited the lowlands of East Anglia, which is where I've set the book. And so that took it a lot further. And then one day I just said, you know what? I've got two choices. I can either sit down at my computer and write this thing down, or I have to admit to myself that it's never going to happen, because there's never going to be a better time than right now, today. And yes. I sat down at my computer and I started to write. That's...
So what?
Oh, no. Go ahead.
No, please.
So that's how Robin Hood came to be.
So what was your process during that? Did you sit down every day? Did you just sit down when the mood took you? Were you a writing machine? Were you like Stallone and you basically boarded up the windows and didn't know what time it was and wrote like a demon for several days? What was your process?
I was working full time. So I would basically come home from work, get something to eat, sit down at my computer, and start writing, and would write until whatever time. And then most weekends, I was writing, at least for one day.
Mhm.
Sometimes I wouldn't look up until the early hours of Monday morning.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it was definitely an investment in time to do it. But
Did
I'm
you
so
enjoy
glad
the
I did.
process?
Yes, I did. I think one of the things that I enjoyed the most was when a character started to take off and develop in a way that I didn't expect.
So I know what that's like.
Yeah.
But for those who've not written fiction, fill us in.
Oh, Robin Hood herself. There was a time where I was sitting there writing, and then all of a sudden say, "This is why Robin is the way that she is." This was an event that had a major impact on her, and I went back and said, "Okay, this is where I need to introduce it," and put a fairly extensive passage on Robin's background that helps to explain who she is. There was a second character that's introduced during the book who was supposed to be a very minor part of it. But this character did not want to remain a minor part of it and came out with a much stronger personality than I intended and became a much more key part of the plot and of the story than I had originally expected that this character would be. And it was thrilling. It was exciting to see this.
And so you've gone through that particular process. Your characters have come to life, and if they're anything like mine, every now and again they just take over, or they tend to wake me
Yes.
up at 2:17 in the middle of the night, 2:17 a.m. and go, "Excuse me, you've made an error here. This didn't happen in that time frame." And it's like, thank you for pointing that out, but can you please point it out in daylight hours?
Yes, that happened too. Uh, Now, one of the reasons for taking this particular time period where I set the book is there's limited history of it. It gives me an opportunity as a writer to create a world that is reasonable, that is likely, but it's going to be very difficult for someone to say, "Oh, that didn't happen. This group didn't exist," or uh, some of the details I left deliberately vague because I didn't want the reader to get caught up in that. I wanted them to have enough detail, enough information to understand the story and to understand the characters without getting caught up in too much detail of what did and didn't happen at a specific period of time. And that is a balancing act. I'm pleased that I managed to achieve that reasonably well.
You did very well indeed. And you mentioned earlier that you went to a number of these places. What sort of impact do you think it has for an author of fiction, particularly, to visit the places and have firsthand experience, even if it's not to the same time frame, of the places of which they're writing?
It's important. I'm not going to say critical because you can spend time researching it, but to see the bigger picture of what it's really like there, of the topography, the plants, the history of the place, gives you so much greater ability to get into the mindset of the characters that it's invaluable.
So you went through the process, you wrote Robin.
Yep.
You now have a manuscript. Now what?
I sat on it for about 6 months. And then working up the courage to say, who do I submit this to? Who do I let see this and see if there's any way forward, if it's worth doing anything with? We had met a year or so previously.
Right.
And so I reached out to you as the first person to actually have a chance to look at the manuscript. And you sent it off, or I sent it off to you, and you said, I'll get back to you in a day or so. And I think it was 3 or 4 days later when you said, okay, I had to read the whole thing. That's great. Let's get this published.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
You helped me find an editor who edited it. And then we self-published it, and we got it out just before the end of December. Well, it was 7 years ago, right about now, that we published it.
And it flew in the face of anybody who says December is a really rotten time to publish a book.
Yes, it did. There's, in a way, I wish I'd published it a little bit earlier, but it was what it was, and things turned out very well. We helped out, did a lot of marketing on it. In the middle of February of the following year, we had some really good success in the popularity of Robin Hood.
So for the process of writing Robin, from the moment that you had the idea through to that success that you just mentioned, what do you think was your highlight?
The highlight. Yeah, that was December 31st, 2015, that I got the boxes full of books and sliced them open and was able to, the first time, to pick up that physical copy of a book with my name on it and say, I did this. This is real. This is
and it's
real.
really good.
Yeah. So yeah, that's absolutely the highlight.
Very cool. So move forward in time. A couple of years after that, you wrote another fictional book, but this one's an entirely different situation, and I think is a beautiful story. Will you please fill us in?
Certainly. 2017, the beginning of it, a friend of mine, someone I'd known for several years, and we got along well. We kind of looked at each other and said, could this relationship go further than where we've taken it? And we both decided to take the plunge and see how far it would go. A few months later, we decided that we wanted to get married and announce our engagement. And said, well, when we celebrate our wedding, we want to, what can we do? What can I do? What can I create that will be absolutely unique? So I wrote a fictionalized account of our relationship and how we got together, how things started. It's set in it's actually set in Denver, Colorado, which is a similar city to where I live, but it's not the same. And it is a city I've never been to. So that took a lot of research on my part in order to figure out, well, what would work? Where were the parts of the city that these two people could live in and work in, where they would interact? And, and I think it turned out really well. It, there was a lot of there's a lot of dark times for both of us in leading up to our relationship. So it is a bit of a dark romance, but it ends on a very high note. And I'm not as happy with it as I am with Robin Hood. Robin Hood, I've started to work on a sequel, and it started going in a direction that I really didn't enjoy. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it, so I've set it aside. But yeah, I'll be picking it up at some point. I do want to get the. I do want to get that.
A hard act to top, my friend.
Yeah.
So okay, all right. So to wrap up, oh, by the way, before I wrap, your work now, you have moved into the finance arena, but you're working with such an historic brand now. And yeah, everybody who knows me knows that I love history.
Yes. Yes, it's a company that has been around for almost 100 years now and makes aircraft. A company by the name of de Havilland Aircraft. A very historic brand, very wonderful brand, and a brand that's made some really interesting announcements for the future recently. So it's an exciting place to be.
I love that. Yes, I mean, it's wonderful to have new and up and coming and innovative new entrants into the market, but I still have a soft spot for our historic brands.
That's right. It's really nice when you see a historic brand that is moving forward and saying, yeah, this is our history, but this is our future. This is what's coming. And
yes.
And they're both exciting.
Yes, I love it. All right, final questions, my friend. Short, sharp answers is all I need. What's the most important lesson you have learned thus far on your author journey?
Just do it. If you've got a book in you, take the time, sit down, and write.
Super. If you had to describe yourself in 3 words, what would they be?
I'm figuring that out. That's a journey. And I don't think, in fact, I hope it will never stop, that I'll always learn more about myself and about the people in the world around me.
I love that. I love that. My version of your figuring it out is work in progress. All right, next question. If you could invite any 5 authors, living or dead, for dinner, who would they be and why?
Who would they be?
You've got 5 empty chairs.
Okay. C.S. Lewis would be one. And J.R.R. Tolkien, I think, would be another one because they are both authors that instilled in me a love of reading. Kathy Reichs is definitely another one. And who else would it be? Well, Walter Scott.
Oh, my beloved Walter Scott.
Would be another one, and Mark Twain.
Very interesting dinner party, sir.
That would, yeah, there would be some interesting conversations.
Most definitely. So, what is the best piece of advice that you can give to somebody who is just starting out on their author journey?
You can do it. Keep on. And just don't give up.
I love it. I love it. And final question. As an author, what do you hope is your legacy?
One would be the books that stand the test of time, that people enjoy and learn from. And if I can encourage one or two other authors to go ahead and write, get their books done, then that's a win too.
I love it. I love it. Mr. Cam Clark, my dear friend, thank you so much for your time today.
You are most welcome. Thank you for giving me this opportunity.
My absolute pleasure. Take care, my friend.
Goodbye.